Greetings everyone, my name is Sai, and damn, I have been on fire lately. I've been proven right so much recently, I may or may not be developing a minor god complex. First, the Overwatch Cash Shop Sucks video I made, which I'll remind you, hardly anyone agreed with when I made it, and now that Blizzard's made the Summer Games loot boxes, everybody's suddenly on my side. And now that No Man's Sky is out, and everyone agrees it's a giant piece of shit, suddenly, everyone thinks my No Man's Sky hype culture video is totally on point. You know guys, on one hand, it's nice to have so many of you agree with me, but on the other hand, it's a real shame about that lag time. But anyways, enough stroking my own ego. So, I think No Man's Sky is shit, and now that the hype's gone, I think most people would probably agree. Again, I saw this coming from pretty much the word go, and you want to know one of the things that really clued me into this? The fact that in all the interviews and all the advertising for No Man's Sky, they would just not shut up about how their game had 18 quintillion planets. For the record, that's the number 18 followed by 18 zeros. And yeah, fair enough, that number is absolutely massive and potentially very impressive. But the thing I couldn't stop thinking was, what's the point? No, really, what's the point? Like, to put 18 quintillion into perspective, I did the math on this, by which I mean I had Google do the math on this, and there are about 3 billion seconds in 100 years, which is about the upper limits you can realistically expect to live for at the moment. So even if you had visited a new planet in No Man's Sky every second of your life, you'd still have only seen a tiny, tiny fraction of the overall game. But that's an extreme on top of an extreme. In the real world, what's the average player going to see, do you think? Well, let's keep the math in this simple, shall we? After all, I am an idiot, and Google can only do so much for me. So, let's say the average player plays No Man's Sky for 10 hours, and from the time they enter the atmosphere of one planet, have gotten out of the ship, scavenged around for whatever they need, left the atmosphere and traveled to the next planet, 20 minutes have passed. So that would be 3 new planets every hour, 3 times 10 is 30, so by that math, the average No Man's Sky player would have only visited 30 planets in their entire time playing the game. And that's if they did nothing else but systematically strip mine every planet and immediately moved on. So in reality, we could probably cut that number down to around 25 or 20, but whatever. We can go further with this. Let's say you play the game for 20 hours, that's 60 planets. 50 hours, 150 planets. You play the game for 100 hours and are extremely dedicated to exploring and nothing else. 300 planets. So even if you're an insane outlier, and even if you do nothing but go to new planets constantly, you've only seen 300 of the 18 quintillion planets. So I must ask, what's the point of the game being this big? I'm pretty sure the only answer you can realistically have is, well, they want to have people discover new planets and animals and shit, and actually feel like they've discovered something no one else ever has. Now, good idea in theory, but pretty shitty in actual execution. Just from my brief time playing the game, it didn't take too long to see all this randomized shit start repeating. All the planets are essentially one big biome, and as soon as you look around after stepping out of your ship, you've pretty much seen the whole thing. All the creatures are randomized, yeah, but they're all pulling from the same small pool of body parts. I mean, maybe on one planet you might see a creature with mammal body 12, and eyes 5, and mouth 8, but then you go to another planet and you see mouth 8 or whatever on something else, and suddenly, the random generation doesn't matter anymore. The fact that there's only so much time in the day to develop new things, and space on a disk to store that information, naturally limits the scope of the game far beyond its 18 quintillion planets. And even if you do see some random combination of body parts you think looks really cool, you can't do anything with it. Like, you wanna ride it around, befriend it, and use it in Pokemon fights? Too bad, you can't do any of that. Okay, let's go simpler. You wanna keep it as a pet? Can't do that. Okay, even simpler. Do you wanna just fucking ride it? You can't do that either. You clip through fucking everything in this game. The most you can do with each of these unique creatures is to look at them for a few seconds, type dick butt into the species name slot, and walk away. Tell you what, you wanna explore No Man's Sky for free? Here, let's head over to thejoshandjayshow.com, link down in the description, and we'll explore No Man's Sky together. You are on a yellow planet with blue trees and blue dinosaurs. Explore. You're on an orange planet with yellow trees and orange dinosaurs. Explore. You're on an orange planet with red trees and yellow dinosaurs. Bam, done. I just saved you $60 and a fuckload of disappointment. You want to know why "What do you do in No Man's Sky" was one of the most asked questions before release? Because the answer is fucking nothing. You fly to a throwaway generic planet, see some random creatures that all look the fucking same, mine some rocks, and then hop back in your spaceship to do it all over again. And if you're really lucky, you might get attacked on the way to the next planet, so you get to spend some minutes fiddling with the god-awful flight controls before you get back to the endless fucking grind. So once again, I must ask, what's the point of making No Man's Sky this big? Why not make it a smaller game? Put in maybe 30 planets that could all have a shit ton more effort put into them, with cities, NPCs, and quests. You know, things that could potentially be fun and interesting? Well, probably because being able to say, "we've got 18 quintillion planets" is really fucking good for the marketing, as all the hype proves. Because it's when you say that your game is so vast and expansive, but are also really vague about the specifics, that people's imaginations run wild, and they imagine your game will be way better than is realistically possible. They start to project all their wildest fantasies onto it, because if it's that big, it must have an insane amount of stuff to do, right? So, good job, No Man's Sky. You've successfully made a game with 18 quintillion planets that are all exactly the fucking same. Special thanks to my lovely Patreon patrons Matt Flowers, Isaiah Christo, Aaron Graff, Saws, Bucky, and Krista for helping support my endeavors.